Next we're going to do Calvinism. No, we're not. I have to back up from the camera because if I stand that close, all you see is my gut. Tonight.
He's not joking.
And see, and I can take it. Anyway, tonight we're going to do something really a whole lot lighter. A lot of you got an email from me. You probably got two because I was so overwhelmed trying to email what I emailed to you. I forgot the attachment. Yeah. It was the hardest thing I've ever emailed in my life. What I emailed was a study guide, a student guide to this particular book. This is where we normally start the semester instead of where we started this year with evolution and intelligent design and all that good stuff, and then going on to free will. So we thought we'd make it a little bit lighter tonight, and hopefully, if it works like I had a picture in my mind, because I have not received any new revelation from Jesus, and I've had strictly my own picture of what I think should take place. Anyway, this book I highly recommend for any of you if you're going to have a conversation with someone that is a professing follower, a lost person, an atheist, or anybody you talk to, the wall. It does not matter. This is a wonderful book. It gives you an idea of how to talk to somebody, and you don't even have to know what you're talking about. That's what makes it so great. I had a 4-hour conversation with a guy that he was an atheist, but he used to come to our meetings, sitting downstairs one day, 4 hours. I said nothing but, really, how'd you arrive at that conclusion? What do you mean by that? I had no idea what he's talking about. None. That's what this book will teach you. It's great. So, based on that, if you happen to have opened what I emailed you, the book talks about having a conversation with somebody. If someone makes a claim, if someone tells you they think Jesus never existed, or that they think the Bible is not true, or whatever claim they make, it is their responsibility to back that claim. You understand?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
So, your responsibility is to give them an answer according to the hope you have, according to the book we so believe. How do you do that? We listen. Ask questions. There's 2 questions that I'm going to give you up front. First 2 or 3 chapters in this book says, what do you mean by that? You know how many times Adam said, I'm a Buddhist? And I said, what do you mean by that? You know how many times he said he's an atheist? And I said, how did you arrive at that conclusion? There's your second question. What do you mean by that, and how did you arrive at that conclusion? Of course, you can use a variation. You don't have to be so, whatever the word is. What's the word I'm looking for? No. Anyway, you can use, like I said, I don't always say, what do you mean by that? Because if somebody asked me, what do you mean by that? I would be like, what part didn't you understand? Or something like that. What do you mean, what do I mean? So you can change that up as far as what do you mean by that, but how'd you arrive at that conclusion? Don't make it so standardized or so, you need to make it yourself, make it your own. And in my world, when somebody says something, I'm like, I'm sorry? Or I'll say, really? Ask them questions to find out, and I'm serious. If you remember one of our first meetings, I told you that I had to define the word for. F-O-R. Do not be afraid to ask what they mean. As we learned early on, that if you say evolution, we need to say, what do you mean by evolution? Okay? So there's your 2 questions. Fun part's coming. Actually, we have pizzas too. I got to spit. Fun part is, we want to have class participation. That's the 2 chairs. I really wanted Corn to be here because Corn will talk to anybody. If you're listening, Corn, you've busted my whole seat. My vision's already crushed. I will play whichever role you want me to play first. but I would like for us to take turns. Isaac and us used to go out on the road. We had a road show, believe it or not, and play. One would be an atheist and one would be Christian. I was typically the atheist.
I got to be the atheist once.
You got to be the atheist once. That's the reason we've wondered about your salvation. So, does that sound like... The reason we want to do this, A, is it's a whole lot more light than what last week was. It gives you the opportunity. I don't care if you have all the head knowledge in the world. If you don't apply it, it serves you no purpose. So how you have a conversation with somebody, instead of saying, "You gonna go to church with me this weekend?" You can say, I've cut you off. Sorry, I'm your friend, and I feel like I've let you down. You can tell them, you can tell them anything. Pick their shirt out, walk up and say, "You know what, you've been my friend for 10 years, and I've never shared Jesus with you. I need to apologize with you." And they're going to say, "Are you serious?" And you can have a conversation that way. You can start with their shirt, their hat, their shoes, anywhere in the world, however Corn does it, however crew talk to you. But the name of the game is ask 3 questions. The person, if you get to the point you want to actually answer the objection, that's fantastic. But you have to ask 3 questions. And I've already given you 2 of them, so you just need to come up with a 3rd one. All right? Yes?
You might let them know how this role-playing went at my church in front of Rhonda's group.
We did this at, for those who didn't hear Mark, those in outside land, Mark said, Isaac and I, as I stated, we did the atheist role play. We went to his church, First Baptist Church of Proctorville, and did an atheist role play for the women's ministry. There were probably 20 women in this group. I took my daughter, and I wore just a regular t-shirt, and I was either getting saved or I was getting stoned before we were finished, because they weren't happy. "What about your daughter?" I said, "What about her?" "Well, what happens if she dies?" I said, "I guess she'll get dirt thrown on her." "Well, aren't you teaching her better?" Well,
I was just sitting there watching it happen. It was so great.
I mean, it was good. I finally had to tell, obviously, we tell them at the end that I'm really not an atheist. So, anyway, Isaac, you want to give them an idea of how we did this? Just
Yeah.
so we'll play first. And we'll take volunteers, and we're not going to make you, although it will, again, I've pictured this. So, this is called training. We can teach you, now we're going to train you.
I have a question real fast.
No!
Which seat is which?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Which one who you want to be?
You've done the atheist more, so why don't you try? I mean, I am better at it. But
He's also humble.
Humility is strong.
So you want to be an atheist?
I can if you want.
I don't even know how to start. All right, so anyway, Isaac's an atheist. Hey man, we've been friends for a long time. I know what your beliefs are, but let's talk.
What is it that you want to talk about? Because I can tell you right now, we're not going to see eye to eye.
And that's fine. I just want to share some of the things that I know and that I believe about God. And I know you don't believe in God, but I would like to at least give you some evidence of why I do. And I've never really had that opportunity. I've kind of just said, "Hey, why don't you come to church with me, or come to our hot dog sale, or whatever." And if you'll give me 10 minutes, I'd just like to share a little bit with you that I think you may consider.
Well, you're talking my language now, because I mean, the reason I am an atheist is I really don't see any evidence for your view at all. I've had this conversation a lot of times with different people. So, sure, I'll give you 10 minutes.
I'm really not going to take that long,
Yeah.
but anyway, well, let me tell you, this is what keeps me grounded, and I wish that I had told you so many times previously, is the resurrection. Because if the resurrection didn't happen, then my belief is a waste of time. So I think that Jesus, and I feel like I can show you some evidence that you can at least consider that Jesus actually rose from the dead.
You think you have historical grounds?
I do.
Okay, well, I don't think that most people in this room are not going to accept a story just because of, someone's walking around saying someone raised from the dead. So give me something to work with here.
All right.
If I told you my grandma raised from the dead last week, you wouldn't believe me.
Well,
probably no matter how much evidence I gave you. But sure, what do you think?
Okay. Well, first of all, I think one of the most intriguing parts were that there were over 500 people that honestly believed that he raised from the dead. That they believed that they saw the risen Jesus.
Where do you get that information? How do you know that?
Well, that particular information comes from the Bible, and I know that you don't particularly put a lot of faith in the Bible, obviously, but I have other sources that I can go with from there. So that's one way.
So you're saying the book that was written by the people who claim this religion is true, that's your evidence. That's your source for believing all these people saw Jesus raised from the dead, because all the people who started the religion said so.
That's one of the facts that are historically reliable based on other eyewitness accounts outside of the Bible. That's why I like using that one.
Okay, well, I mean, clearly the Bible is a biased source, so what do you mean sources outside the Bible? What are some of those?
I'm glad you asked. See how it works? He has 3 questions to get me to lead on, and if it goes the other way, let me show you the other side of it. And that's all you have to do. Just get 3 questions. And if you want to go as far, because he would continue it out and I would continue out, I would present the minimal facts, basically, of the resurrection. If you don't know that stuff, that's fine. 3 questions is the key. Listen to what they're saying. Opposite, he's going to make a claim, and I'm still the Christian, okay? He's the atheist, I'm the Christian. So, what's up? That's in you a lot.
Man, how do I start this conversation?
It's harder to be on that side.
It's harder to be on this side and start, because I really don't
But
care
I'm
what you
the
believe.
better.
I mean,
What do you mean by that?
all right, John, I have a question for you. I know that you are a strong and devout Christian. I know you work a lot with apologetics. So let me ask you this. If you believe in a God that is all-powerful, in charge of everything, controls human history, and is all good, then how can you explain the evil and suffering that we see around us? Because, I mean, you can't turn on the news without seeing it, but even in this area, we see like these sex trafficking scandals of prestigious members of our community being involved in this stuff. And so how could God let something as bad as that happen under his jurisdiction?
Good question, player. I'm glad you asked.
I'm excited for this. Let's see what we got.
So, what exactly do you mean by this evil and suffering?
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. I think everyone in here knows what you mean by evil and suffering. Suffering being something that is harmful to an individual, something that inflicts pain. In this case, you're talking about sex trafficking. You can talk about literal physical pain inflicted to a person, or you can talk about psychological damage to one's well-being, things that are happening that you clearly say are wrong, that I think we would all agree is wrong, and yet you have a God that can do something about it and does not.
So, I'm not following. What's your point? What are you trying to...
It seems to me that you have an inconsistent picture of God. You have a picture of a God who is good and should therefore not allow that kind of evil and suffering to happen to people in his creation. And yet it's something that we see that's happening around us all the time. So why would a good God allow that?
Well, I have 2 questions. First of all, one would be, what do you mean by God? And second of all, how did you arrive at the conclusion that whatever you mean by God is allowing such things to happen?
I mean, by God, I'll go with your definition of God. I'll go with the Christian concept of God, of being that is outside space-time, matter, energy, creator of the universe, sovereign over all. But
How do you arrive that he's allowing evil and suffering?
Well, this is more of a picture of the consistency of your view. I don't believe God exists, but you do. So in your view, God both exists, is sovereign and good, and yet clearly no one can deny the evil and suffering around us. So I don't have a problem here. You have a problem.
Well, very nice. So, again, I asked more than 3 questions, he asked more than 3 questions. You see where we're trying to get at? Listen to what he's saying, pick up on the little key words. I mean, he went into a lot more detail, but you could have led him on there by saying, what do you base evil and suffering on? He's basing it on a Christian God that he doesn't believe in. I don't know. There's a lot of examples. And the idea is for you all to try to put those in place, so if you are having a conversation, that you clarify what somebody's telling you. Just like the example I gave you earlier, evolution. It's a wide topic. When you say God, that covers a wide area. When you say evil and suffering, let them define evil, because typically they're going to give you examples like sex trafficking. Okay, that's fantastic. Give me a definition of what evil is. You gave me an example of evil. What is evil in your according to your definition? Our definition is the lack of good. So where is your good? What are you basing evil on? See? Did I mention we're getting pizza? Anybody want to play? 2 of you, because he and I are out. But 2 of you, cool. Come right up, young man. Anybody else? Come on. I'm not playing the entire game. Nobody knows. Come on, it's your turn. Anyone? Oh boy. If you're coming up on this side, be sure to watch the cord.
Like last week.
Whichever way y'all want to start off is fantastic. Go for
Mind
it.
if I'm an atheist?
Sure, I'll do that.
All
All right. The guy on the right, and I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
right. James.
James is going to be the atheist, and Kelby is our Christian.
You want to start the interaction? I can start it.
Sure, why not?
All right.
All right.
So my favorite thing about Christians is they love to talk about their God and the fact that there are how many Christian religions out of how many religions overall? All of you have some sort of God, some sort of deity. Who came first and who was right? I mean, how do you substantiate that your God came before Greek mythology Zeus or Muslim Allah? I mean, how do you even sort that out?
Probably 2 questions I could think of.
All right.
What do you mean by God? Because there's a lot of claims, of course, of many gods, obviously. 2, deities. Like, what do you mean by deity?
Okay, so God specifically is referring to the Christian God, which is part of the Holy Trinity, which that's a whole nother story that's confusing as all get out. But 3 people are 1 and 1 is 3. But so when I say God, I'm referring specifically to the Christian, Baptist, Methodist, Catholic, et cetera, go on.
All right.
And when I talk about deities, it's more along the lines of anyone that is considered in all these different religions to be special and powerful. So for the Muslim belief, it would be Allah, and for even the Catholics, they have more than just God. Mother Mary, and then you have all the different mythologies and beliefs. Native Americans, they would consider a tree a deity. So how do you know that the Native Americans weren't right when they called everything a god and a spiritual power? So what makes they must have been along before the Jews became Christians.
Okay, so
Started Christianity.
probably the best way I can explain it to you is, so I'll propose to you, how can Christianity be true? If that seems assuming what you're asking is, how's
it more legitimate than others?
Okay, I understand now. Okay, so let's take the character of Jesus for a minute.
Okay.
All right, so
That's fantastic. See what happened? But do you see what, and I step back here so that we can all see, do you see what happened? It's what we all normally try to do. He asked a question, or a few, And you jumped immediately to, okay, you did ask a couple of questions, and that's great. But he ended up jumping to, okay, let me see if I can explain to you.
Is that wrong? Am I wrong?
What we're based on is we want to get all the information we can, ask 3 questions, whichever way it goes. He made a claim, okay?
All right.
What's the difference in all these different gods or all these different religions or whatever? What do you mean by that? Well, I mean the Christian God, deities, what makes yours the only one right? Well, how did you arrive at that conclusion? Well, because, I don't know, whatever. See what I'm trying to say?
All right.
Okay. You're new, and that's great. Let's let somebody else try. You got a good question, so you stay. If you don't care. No, don't trip on my cord, Kelby. I don't want to kill you over the camera cord. Next, please. James has good questions.
I don't mean to be aggressive. I just never met an atheist that's not super aggressive. And my brother-in-law is a Buddhist atheist, sort of like.
I'm pretty sure my
Those are
brother's
separate.
too, but I don't know.
It depends on the day. Huh? No, that's what I want them to learn. I want us to learn, and this is good practice for me too.
I vote Sean.
I'll be more gentle this time.
When you vote someone
No,
else.
don't back down.
I think Sean should try.
Come on, Sean.
You're up for it.
Sean will try it. He's like
There's no
Mikey.
philosophy
You know
involved,
Mikey
so you're
is.
good. There's no philosophy, so you're good.
So think about what he said. We're in the Christian position. And this isn't an unusual situation. If you are talking to someone about Jesus, most people aren't having these conversations. I mean, I hate to say that, but this is a legitimate, not an atheist, but someone playing an atheist asking, what makes Christianity right? The only one right. Well, I don't know what he asked Sean, but Sean will have an answer.
Probably goes.
So, you see the idea? If you get in the habit of practicing this and using it, is it not a whole lot more comfortable to be able to actually go out and talk to somebody than say, will you go to church? Can you tell I'm not a big fan of the church invites?
I'm going to give you one that locked me up a long time ago.
Oh, good. We like water.
So, we've known each other for a while. I know you're a Christian. You know that I'm not. I'm going to give you one chance. Give me one example, one real tangible thing that I can understand and wrap my mind around that isn't mystical, and I will consider going to church with you or talking about God. But you give me one real example of how God has done something specific in your life, and don't tell me how you got saved and you had feelings. I don't want to hear about feelings. Movie directors use music to inspire feelings all the time, so I want to hear about your heart. I want to hear about what God did specifically that you can say that was God and nothing else. It sucks, doesn't it? I reacted similar to this.
Find a question to ask. and
Okay,
then-
so what do you mean by God?
The person that you pray to every day, that you claim runs the world, created earth, and saved you, and now you get to go to heaven and fly around with angels, him. Explain to me how he is real, and isn't this just this creation of weak-minded people that need something to hang on to get through their dreary, awful lives?
God save him.
Well, I mean, I guess I base my salvation, or how I came to it off the Bible, God's word. So, I mean,
You're answering. Ask him a question.
That's me.
Ask him anything. And again, it doesn't have to be, what do you mean by God? It doesn't have to be.
so I mean, you say that well, you asked me for evidence that God, I guess, is real, or do you have any evidence that would prove otherwise? Any evidence that shows that God?
See,
That's
and that's good.
That's a good question.
But he opened a whole can of worms there.
Yeah.
That's a good, fantastic answer question. Take him to where we want us to be the comfortable ones. We have truth. Are you willing to have a conversation about truth? I'll tell you about why I believe in God. If we're talking, let's start with truth.
Okay.
Do you believe the truth exists?
Yes.
Do you believe truth is objective or subjective?
It is objective.
Fantastic. So now we've established that truth does exist. And let me give you my definition. Truth is what corresponds to reality.
Yeah.
And it is objective. So if something is true, it's true for you, me, and everybody, everywhere, all the time, right?
Sure.
Right. Fantastic. So, based on truth, let's move on to why I would believe in God. Let's talk about the Bible.
Okay.
If I can give you enough evidence to convince you that the Bible is reliable, would you accept that and do what you said and go to church with me and have a conversation about God?
If you can prove that the Bible is a scientific truth, yes.
Okay, proof's a strong word. What do you mean by proof? How much proof was it take?
It would take you to be able to substantiate all those miracles, all those stories. I mean, you have a Christian version of Hercules running around killing people with donkey jaws. You've got.
Okay, fantastic. I think it's a good place to start. We've established that truth does exist. So if truth exists, then I think God exists, and I'll start with the Bible to explain why. First of all, I'm not trying to prove inspiration or the Bible's without error.
That was Samson, by the way.
But I want you to consider to look at the Bible as any other historical document.
All right.
If I tell you that we have more manuscript copies of the Bible than any other historical document ever written, how would that make you feel?
People get passionate about a lot of silly crap.
Okay? And you base that on?
I mean, the Beatles, perfect example. I mean, you saw teenage girls religiously follow them, become fanatics worldwide. They were just as big as Jesus.
What does that have to do with anything to do with the number of copies of manuscripts that we have in any other historical document?
Emotion-based attitudes and.
How do you arrive on emotions when I've got actual evidence of copies of manuscripts of the Bible versus Homer's Iliad, Julius Caesar's writings, numerous historical writings, and we have more copies written in a closer time frame than any of the other historical documents? Do you believe George Washington was president?
Yes.
Why?
Because there's proof that he was.
There's no
documents.
proof. But do you see how that goes though? We take the driver's seat. And if you'll look at what I emailed you today, it'll go through. You don't have the answers, obviously, because I have the study guide or the teacher's manual, but it'll give you a good idea. Pick you a place to start that you're comfortable. Does truth exist? I always start with truth when I'm having a conversation with somebody. Because if truth doesn't exist, we're wasting our time. And if they believe it may take a little bit longer because he believed it's objective, fantastic. We've established that. Now let's move on. What evidence do you want to use to overcome what he's arguing? I would have used the Bible in that instance. If I establish the historicity of the Bible, he has told up his end of the bargain, which will open the door to present the gospel, because if the Bible's true, then the gospel's true, Jesus exists, miracles exist, and you need to go to church.
So what do you do with the jerk that is well versed in playing the game and knows to pitch back, just immediately pitch back another question? So you say, what is truth? Does truth exist? Is truth real? And I won't say his name, but he pitches back, what is truth? With a very snobby.
Yeah, exactly. Well, my definition of truth would be.
I normally want to punch him in the face.
Yeah, my definition of truth would be that corresponds with reality. But I ask you the question: do you believe? You're trying, and that happens if you go to a professor, if you're in a class, and please don't do this with your boyfriends or girlfriends either. If your professor makes a statement, please don't look at them and say, "What do you mean by that?" I mean, you can do it out of respect. Seriously, if they make a statement they think Christianity's nonsense, raise your hand and very respectfully say, "I'm sorry, how'd you get to that point?" Or whatever. But okay, you can go. You want to play a game?
Sure.
Oh, where's Heather?
Can I be the atheist?
You're supposed to. We have the truth, son. That's what makes it fun.
You're doing well.
You. We knew Kobe'd want to come back.
I'm just
Oh, okay.
I really don't
save you the wrath,
What,
boy.
what's the
Ooh, Muncie.
Muncie, okay? Let's get Muncie.
I can take months.
We voted on you.
I need your card first.
We voted on you. I'll
That's
take,
fine.
I'll take it down. Sean wants to be an atheist.
Sean wants to be the atheist? You take it down, okay. Thrown into the spotlight, okay. Not Sean.
So, the Bible claims that God is all good and all and omnipotent, and He can prevent anything from happening if He wanted to. So, why do you think with the Holocaust and the thing that happened in Rwanda, a massacre, why does God let His creation die? And
So what are you saying that the Holocaust was evil?
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, what are you basing that off of?
I mean, they killed over 600. Well, they killed over 600 million Jews, along with people who were, homosexuals, African Americans. They killed so many people. I mean, would you think of that as good?
I think that is wrong, but why is that wrong?
I mean, because morally speaking, I mean, it's just it goes against what morality is. I mean, the idea that killing is wrong. So it's just a rule that most people have.
Where does morality come from?
Culture is probably culture.
Did you ask a question?
Yes. Morality is wrong. I mean, sorry, killing is wrong.
What would you say morality is wrong?
Killing is wrong.
Okay, now would you say that there are things that are wrong at all times in all places for all people?
I think that depends kind of relative. I think that truth and reality, truth is reality. So like the idea that like murder is wrong for us, that might not be the same thing in culture.
Okay, so is torturing babies for fun wrong everywhere, at all times, in all places, for all people? Please don't track out of this one, please. Okay, why is that wrong?
I mean, it's just a universal reality that is wrong.
Because it is a universal reality, there has to be a standard outside of this that we go by. If it was all just left up to us, then anything could be permissible. We could decide that anything was right. Now, because something like that is wrong at all times, in all places, for all people, therefore that transcendent agent outside, that moral being outside that sets those standards is God. Those standards are the Ten Commandments. Now,
So would you say God has to follow that standard that He sets?
well, I definitely believe that God is the moral standard for that, but why are you saying that? Why does God have to follow the
I mean,
standard?
because God says thou shalt not kill, but I mean, He has, called people to go out and just kill people. He told Saul to go out and kill every man, woman, and child. So He's making this claim that killing is wrong, but then He then says, go out and kill.
All right. See, he did a good job. And he threw some answer in there too. Along with the questions, he's throwing answers in there. Sean did a good job as well. He was trying to make his point better because he did a good job. To make the point, it's hard playing the atheist, isn't it?
Good job.
It really is. Depending on whatever. So, two more.
Oh, thank gosh, okay.
Anybody want to face Adam?
No.
I'm ready.
Adam, do you believe Christian?
No, what's your score? What's your score?
I'm good.
So we just had a minor setback. So I
We
told
only
them,
got 2 pieces.
yes, I told them 4. They gave me 2 more on their way.
Oh, okay.
Somebody has stole my $1,000 bike, so I will take my wrath out on you. Yeah. Just letting you know.
Really?
Here's a good example. Oh. This is a fantastic example. What is it that you profess as your worldview?
Oh no.
I'm an atheist.
That's all right. So
Okay.
ask him, why does it bother you somebody stole your bike?
I like my bike. I happen to be attached to it.
What does he base that moral? Why is that morally wrong?
to say anything about being morally wrong. It's fun to ride.
That's right. The only thing you can technically say is that he doesn't like that somebody stole his bike. You can't say that it was wrong that they did.
Sure I can.
Yeah, I forgot it's Adam. He can say whatever. Anyway, anybody want to play with Adam? True atheist, he won't eat you. He'll just ask you a question or make a
We can have a warm-up debate.
I'll take it. I got it. Yeah.
Notice that.
So, ladies and gentlemen, these are our debaters for Saturday. So I'll be moderating here this evening. More than likely, I have Chan.
For those of you who don't know, this is Chan Arnett. He's been a buddy since for years ago when we had our first guest, Dr. Turek. These two are debating on morality. Saturday at 7 here. There's your free plug. This will be just like everybody else. You've got 3 questions because we have other contestants. You can play the debate Saturday.
Now, you going to be the Christian, I'm the atheist, or how are we doing?
Let's do that. So, why do you hate God?
Because he don't exist.
So, you know, you damn dirty atheists.
It's okay, he's Presbyterian.
You know, the thing is, I know the difference between right and wrong because, you know, God tells me. Wait.
Are you the Christian or the atheist?
Yeah, I'm the Christian. So,
well, I'd be interested in how does he tell you?
well, it's written in the Bible.
Oh, so the Bible. Well, why I think that's important. How about you? It's like Grimm's fairy tales to me. I think that's more authoritative.
That's kind of insulting.
That didn't answer the question.
I mean, you know, there's a lot of biblical scholarship that shows that you know, the Bible as a whole is a very reliable set of documents, and that we can trust what's written in there, and so even okay. So here's the thing. Even if you disagree with the Bible, let's just say, yeah, the Bible's a bunch of BS.
Okay.
What do you base your, you know, because at least I have something to base my morals on.
Sure.
What do you base it on? You know, at least I have this place in the Bible where I trust that the authors have spoke with God and God said killing was wrong.
Sure.
So I mean, what do you have?
You just self-evidently know that these things are wrong, and they can still be objective because I can appeal to a standard that's beyond us, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can have these Platonic abstractions, so that you have just goodness or evil and things like that just existing beyond us. That way they're objective and independent of us, but I'm not. You know, I don't have to have it specially revealed to me. We can just know this directly from experience.
So what if you have a different experience than somebody else?
And that's when you can appeal to these Platonic abstractions.
Bring it to more.
But how do you get an ought from? How do you get an ought from?
Because it's a Platonic abstraction. It's beyond us, so you can have oughts and not-nots, right?
Well, I mean, a Platonic extraction in itself, it sounds like an is. I mean, how does a Platonic abstraction tell you how you should live?
Because
Yeah,
if it
that's what most
accords with
Christians would say, a Platonic extraction.
Yeah.
I've never met one, but
How do,
hey.
yeah. How do you get a Platonic abstraction? I mean, it just sounds.
it's like it's just a brute fact, kind of like our experience of the external world of objects. It's just a brute fact. These objective moral values, they're binding on us from the outside.
It sounds like your opinion. It is your opinion.
I mean, how could you show me that that's not?
Well, I mean, I have this moral standard of God that exists outside of.
Well, how is God a moral standard? I'll explain that to you.
Well, as you see, God's nature provides the foundation by which we can have objective moral values and duties. You see.
Sure, but so can Platonic abstraction. So why should I choose that over mine?
Well, the thing is, how can Platonic abstractions give you moral duties? I mean, who's going to enforce these abstractions?
The abstractions themselves impose it upon us. I mean, you just say God imposes it upon us. Why can't I just say Platonic abstraction?
Well, because the abstractions, how do we enforce the abstract? Who enforces the abstractions?
Us as a community. Obligations are social. Right?
So there's your preview in a reverse order. In a reverse order.
Yeah.
For the,
He didn't believe anything he was saying. Yeah.
for the debate that is on Saturday here on campus across the hall in the Don Morris room, 7 o'clock. Everybody's invited. It's free. Adam will be playing the atheist because that's what he professes. Chad will be playing the theist because that's what he professes. And what was it? A Platonic?
Abstraction.
The Platonic abstraction is next week's homework we need to bring, because I don't know what, I have no idea.
I have no
Isaac's on the one either.
Yeah,
Need 2 more players. Bring your pizza. You don't have to bring your pizza. No. No. Let's be realistic. I don't believe your book. I don't believe in God. I think evil and suffering's terrible. What's some common objections?
So Mark versus John.
What?
Mark versus you.
We just asked. We're just doing examples. My answer is going to be a Platonic extraction. I don't Huh?
Let's just talk about Neoplatonism.
Yeah, or Neoplatonism.
I still don't know.
Yeah, we can talk about that open theism.
Anyway, what's some of the common objections that you've heard?
Atheism seems to be heavily attracted to Christianity.
Yeah.
I find that, well, for the most part, atheists come to me. They find me.
Right.
It doesn't take long because I was in the Army for a little while, and the one nice thing about being in the Army is when you're with your group of guys in the infantry, there's 55 guys. They're your guys. You can do anything, say anything, be anything, and it's cool because you have to fight together.
Right.
And so we just accept each other. So the one thing that I wanted to be sure to do was to early and loudly profess my salvation, at the very least. Wasn't a perfect Christian. Drank with the guys, carried on, all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, what the people that did find me, especially when we were deployed, because there's no such thing as an atheist when you're getting mortared. There's no such thing as an atheist when you're getting shot at. That question that I proposed to you was from my squad leader who professed atheism. And he asked me that after second or third firefight, he took a bullet to his chest plate. So he was very interested in my take on God, and he wanted, I could tell he was on the verge and he was struggling. The thing about atheism is, atheists, I feel like the conviction is strong, and they're running really hard. Atheists know they have a lot of head knowledge. I find a lot of atheists are dropout Christians. They were raised in a Christian church. Their parents, grandparents took them, devout Christian. They're just angry. They have a reason to be angry, but they don't have an outlet for their anger.
Right.
So, generally speaking, your atheist is going to be very educated on the matter. Interesting. Normally, we're educated on things that we're interested in, right?
What a concept. Except, and see, this is where I get in trouble too, because of the next statement I'm going to make. Except Christianity or professing followers. How many people have you met that professes to love God, things that you're interested in, that if you sat down and said, okay, just like you did, tell me why you love God and I should believe in God. How many of them are going to say, well, I feel it in my heart?
Yeah.
Exactly. How many of them are going to say, well, because the book says so?
Yeah.
Okay, every religion feels it in their heart, and every religion has a book, so what makes you different? Why should I believe in the Christian God? And people think apologetics is not important, which obviously it is, because we're all professing followers except for one, and that's okay. That's what apologetic does. We practice and teach things like this so that professing followers can strengthen their faith and have a conversation, so that they can actually talk to somebody about why Christianity is true. If you can't have a conversation, you're not talking to anybody. If you aren't making people mad, you're not talking to anybody. And I promise you, I don't make people mad on purpose. But people don't want to hear, well, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Well, you know, that really doesn't mean, that really doesn't mean what you think it means. They get upset when you tell them, and it doesn't mean that. Sorry, that's one of my favorites. Please, speak to me. Go ahead.
Do you think it's the same in other cultures for like other predominant religions, other predominant faiths? Do you think like say in like, I don't know, like Bangladesh or something like, or not Bangladesh, Indonesia or something like that, that Islam, it's kind of the same way with Islam, like people culturally believe it, but they don't necessarily know why. Do you think it's the same way in other countries?
No.
Yes.
I don't,
Yes.
the country
Yes.
maybe, the religion, no.
Like that.
I think if they're a follower of Islam, I think they know why they are a follower. Same thing with Mormonism and Jehovah's Witnesses. I don't care where they're at.
That's because they'll get their heads cut off if they don't.
Well, exactly. In Christianity, we don't have any type of threats or any type of training per se to make disciples as we're told. So we're the ones that's wandering around and don't know why we believe. While you've got Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, and Muslims, and all these others, they know.
Can I respond to him, because I was in the military too. Actually, when I went into the military, I was very hardcore Christian. I was like the only member of my church that would go down to the altar on my knees and beg for God to help me. But when I went into the military, I met a lot of people outside, because I was raised in a somewhat small town in the Midwest, and so I was surrounded by pretty much I didn't even know atheists existed, really. Didn't know it was an option. And when I went to the military, I met so many different viewpoints that I never would have met otherwise, because people from all over the country. And in fact, a lot of the drill sergeants, hearing their perspectives really opened my eyes, because a lot of them had been Christians before they went to Iraq or Afghanistan, and seeing how religion had torn those places apart, and the way that religion had caused people to blow themselves up or use children as weapons or fly planes into the Twin Towers, it had really shaken the faith of a lot of my drill sergeants, a lot of the people that I knew and communicated with, to the point to where they were no longer believers anymore. They just thought it was all crap.
But you see, the problem is, how are they defining religion? Because you can't. It's easy to call it all religion. You can lump it all together. We can lump sexuality as just like men and women, as it's just a gender. But that's not fair. There's a man, there's a woman, very different.
I mean,
So,
religion has a very specific term. Christianity is a religion. Nobody's denying it.
right, but is the Muslim thing religion, or is it a cult? It was started by
You're gonna have a hard time convincing
child
people in
rapist.
this room that Islam is just a cult.
You don't have anybody in here, well, you may have some, but
Yeah.
that it's just a cult. But the point being, that's a very good point.
Yeah,
Because
my point is, I actually find it personally insulting for you to say that there's no atheists in Foxhole, because there are plenty of people. And even if that were true, all that would mean is that when you become really scared, then you start believing in anything just to help you because you're afraid of dying. That wouldn't make Christianity true. That would just make people cowards. That's all it would mean. It wouldn't mean that any religion would be true, and it would apply just as much to the people we're fighting against. So there would be the people who are fighting with AK-47s, fighting our soldiers. They're not atheists either, because they believe they need Allah before they die. So does that make it true because they're afraid they're going to die and that they need Allah to save them in the afterlife? That's not even an argument.
okay, good discussion. Let's move on. You can continue, if y'all want to continue that, that's fantastic. Just, we need to move on. Anybody got a time? Got what time it is?
It is 7:57.
So we're real close. I do want to point out that's 2 moral claims Adam's made tonight. So you all should talk to him about that. When you get a chance. Questions, answers, comments? Did you enjoy doing this? Did it help kind of open your eyes to see how to have a conversation, ask questions? Some of you had your computer open and opened what I sent you. It's a 6-week study if you want to go through that. Isaac's probably the only one that's been through it that's here. Well, except that one guy in the back. So that's up to you. If you want to actually go through the entire 6 weeks, that's fine. I don't see anything wrong with it. It's a video, then we have conversation. We can actually do it according to your study guide. We've never had enough people to break out and go 2-on-2 or 4-on-4, whatever that study guide says. If not, we'll come up with a different topic next week and move on. But I think everybody should, just like they should be grounded in what they believe. I think you need to be able to have a conversation. There's no point in knowing this stuff if you can't talk about it. Okay? Questions, answers, comments? We're waiting on 2 more pizzas, and that's fine. While we wait on the pizzas, I'm going to turn the live feed off because I'm done. Unless anybody else wants to play, then you can discuss whatever.